Good morning, LifePoint. How are all of you doing this morning? Thank you for coming up. Thank you for braving it. Hey. Swing low, sweet chariot, coming for to carry me home. Swing low, sweet chariot, coming for to carry me home. Well, looked over Jordan, and what did I see? Coming for to carry me home. A band of angels coming after me, coming for to carry me home. Swing low, sweet chariot, coming for to carry me home. Swing low, sweet chariot, coming for to carry me home. Well, sometimes I'm up and sometimes down, coming for to carry me home. But still my soul feels heavenly bound, coming for to carry me home. Swing low, sweet chariot, coming for to carry me home. Swing low, sweet chariot, coming for to carry me home. No more worries, no more pain, every doubt erased. No more worries weighing down my soul, coming for to carry me home. So if you get there before I do, coming for to carry me home. Tell all my friends I'm coming too, coming for to carry me home. Swing low, sweet chariot, coming for to carry me home. Swing low, sweet chariot, coming for to carry me home. Well, coming for to carry me home. Thanks, guys. Okay, this is a new song that we're gonna do. Nothing can separate, even if I run away. Your love never fails. I know I still make mistakes, but you have new mercies for me every day. Your love never fails. You stay the same through the ages. Your love never changes. There may be pain in the night, but joy comes in the morning. When the oceans rage, I don't have to be afraid, 'cause I know that you love me. Your love never fails. The wind is strong and the water's deep, but I'm not alone here on these open seas, 'cause your love never fails. The chasm is far too wide, I never thought I'd reach the other side. Your love never fails. You stay the same through the ages. Your love never changes. There may be pain in the night, but joy comes in the morning. When the oceans rage, I don't have to be afraid, 'cause I know that you love me, and your love never fails. 'Cause you make all things work together for my good. You make all things work together for my good. You make all things work together for my good. You make all things work together for my good. You stay the same through the ages. Your love never changes. There may be pain in the night, but joy comes in the morning. When the oceans rage, I don't have to be afraid, 'cause I know that you love me, and your love never fails. Your love never fails. Thanks, guys. So thank you guys all for coming this morning and joining us online. As you can see behind me and on your screen at home, the giving slide is up. This is just for the work that we do at LifePoint to keep bringing the Word of God to you guys and helping support us, all the work that we do here. So if you can and you want to, please help us to continue on and give and keep this thing going. I don't know why I screwed that up at the last bit. So anyways, here's Darren. Thank you.
Well, good morning, friends. So we're working our way through the Gospel according to St. Luke. And today we're going to talk about something that I've changed my mind on a few times over the years. Let's just dive straight into the text. So in Luke chapter 6 and verse 1, we read that one Sabbath day, Jesus was going through the fields of grain, and his disciples began to pick some heads of grain and rub them in their hands and eat the kernels. Now, the key word in that sentence is the word Sabbath, which comes from the Hebrew word Shabbat, which means to rest. Let's pause on this very welcome word, rest. The word rest, I think, is a very positive word. You work hard all day and you look forward to having a rest if your wife will let you. You slog your guts out all week and you look forward to Friday night so you can flop down on the sofa and watch some TV and rest. You knock your pan in all year, and one of the things you really look forward to about the summer vacation is that you get to have some much needed rest. Okay, so to Sabbath, to Shabbat, means to stop doing the stuff you normally do and just take a little bit of a break, okay? This concept comes from the fourth of the 10 Commandments, which says this: remember the Sabbath day by keeping it holy. 6 days shall you labor and do your work, but the seventh day is a Sabbath to the Lord your God. On it you shall not do any work, neither you, nor your son, nor your daughter, nor your manservant, nor your maidservant, or anything like that. Now, here's the deal. During Jesus' lifetime, these words on the screen were regarded as being some of the most important in the entire Bible. So important that the rabbis who lived around the time of the New Testament offered prolific guidance on what a person could and could not do on the day of rest. And this guidance, eventually became rules, and the rules became endless. For example, there's a whole section in the Mishnah that details what a person can and can't do on this holy day. The Mishnah is like what is it? It's a Jewish sacred text. It's a collection of all the things the important rabbis ever said. And in this book, there's a section that talks about what you can do on the Sabbath, and it lists 39 prohibited activities. And each prohibited activity has a subsection, and each subsection has bullet points, and each bullet point has footnotes, and each footnote has a footnote that goes with a footnote. Do you understand? It went on and on and on. For example, there's a line in the Mishnah that says you're not allowed to tie a knot on the Sabbath day. Tying your shoelaces, against the rules. Tying your tie, against the rules. There's another line that says you're not allowed to walk for more than 1,999 paces. So a couple of thousand years before Fitbits were invented, these guys were standing up in synagogue on a Sunday and saying, you must count the number of steps you're walking in a day. And if on the Sabbath it gets to 1,999, stop. You're breaking the rules. These rules were unending. They had another rule about, you were only allowed to tie one stitch on an item of clothing. Any more than that was regarded as work and against the rules. So the reason you were allowed to tie one stitch, I guess, was if you went to, your parents' house for dinner and, your mum cooked you too much and, you ate so much that when you sat down, you burst a seam or something, right? And, for the sake of decency, you were allowed to put a stitch in and get yourself going, but no more than that. There's another line in the Mishnah that says this. Listen to this, bizarre. It says, if a building falls down on the Sabbath, enough rubble may be removed to discover if any victims are alive. If they're alive, they may be rescued, but if dead, the corpses must be left until the next day. How extensive does religion have to be? Right, you have this list of things, and it's all decided at a committee, and they go, well, we've got a rule about stitches on clothing, we've got a rule about how many knots we're allowed to tie on a Sunday, how many paces we're allowed to walk on the Sabbath day. Are we done? Yeah, no, wait a minute, we don't have a rule about whether or not we're allowed to do construction in a fallen building. Better get that in, and that's how these people live. Did you get the picture? Jesus lived in a world that defined spirituality as being the successful keeping of rules, and those rules went on and on and on. And if you were really good at knowing what the rules were, and if you were really good at keeping the rules, then you were in. God liked you, and you're part of the club. But if you didn't know what all the rules were, and you weren't really good at keeping the rules, then you were out. God didn't like you, and you weren't part of the club. Next sentence. We read that some of the Pharisees asked, why are you doing what is unlawful on the Sabbath? Okay, so here's what's happening. Jesus and his disciples are walking along and they're doing two things they shouldn't be doing. They're walking and they're eating. I don't know if eating while walking cancels out the calories. I kind of feel it might. Might just have invented a new diet right here in church. Eat a hamburger on the treadmill. Knock yourself out. Two issues here. First issue, like I said previously, it was against the rules to walk for more than 1,999 paces on the Sabbath day, and yet here Luke says the disciples are journeying or traveling through a cornfield. Rule number 2, it was against the rules to harvest crops on the Sabbath, and yet here the disciples are picking corn. And what I find fascinating about this particular sentence is that no sooner are the rules broken than who should appear on the scene like a judgmental jack-in-the-box than the rule keepers. Do you have people like that in your life? They're in your circle. They're kind of your friends, maybe, maybe not. But the second you put a foot out of line, or the second you do something they don't agree with, they just jump onto the scene with their accusations and their criticisms. Always good to remember that not everyone in your circle is for you. Not everyone who seems to be your friend is actually really friendly. And so you notice this in the Gospels. Whenever Jesus has something to say, this critical group of people are always there to hear him. Whenever Jesus does something, this critical group of people are there to see what he does. And Jesus and his critics would appear to be on the same page, on the surface of things at least. I mean, Jesus is into religion, so are they. At the early stage of his career, there's a resurgence of spirituality around Jesus' ministry. They're into the same thing. And so they kind of travel together, they're going together, they're in the same crowds, hearing the same stories, attending the same events. Like Jesus and the Pharisees weren't nearly as separate as we've always been led to believe. They're always there together. But just because there is a togetherness doesn't mean there isn't danger. The second Jesus puts a foot wrong, boom, they're there. With their put-downs, their accusations, and their criticisms. Right? Anyway, enough about your mother-in-law. So forgive me, Jesus answered them. And he says, have you never read what David and his companions did when they were hungry? They entered the house of God, and taking the consecrated bread, and he ate what it is lawful only for priests to eat, and he gave some to his companions. Now, here Jesus is referring to a famous story in the Old Testament, and the story, pretty much goes as it says there. David is on the run from the law, and he breaks into the Jewish temple. He's not allowed to do that. And he, once he's in the temple, he breaks into the bread cupboard, and he eats the sacred holy bread, which he's not allowed to do. So he does two things he's not allowed to do because he's hungry. Now, when Jesus says this, he's not given the Pharisees a history lesson. He's not saying, because David broke the rules back then because he was hungry, it's therefore okay for me to break the rules here because I'm hungry too. That's not what he's saying. He's saying something more powerful than that. In Jesus' day, David was Israel's most popular leader in the past. And the Jewish people believed that out of David's line would come another leader who would fix all the problems. And the first century being what the first century was, those problems were pronounced. These people were dealing with the Romans, they were dealing with high taxation, they were dealing with poverty. Almost nothing worked for these people. And so whenever they would have a coffee together, whenever they would complain together, whenever they would watch YouTube videos together, it would all be about, when is the leader going to come? When are things going to get turned around? In fact, at the end of every synagogue service in the first century, they would say a sentence like this. They would say, "O God, may you cause the sprout of David to flourish." It was their way of saying, God, would you fix this COVID nonsense? God, would you sort out this economy? God, would you sort out all the craziness in our world? Nothing makes sense anymore. Everything's messed up. Everything's upside down. God, we can't take this any longer. Will you send someone to fix all this mess? At the end of every synagogue service, they said this, and they mentioned the word David. So when Jesus talks this way, he's drawing a deliberate comparison between David, the Messiah of old, and himself. And that's troubling. Because in the mind of the super-religious Pharisees, the great leader to come would validate their narrow view of religion, not demolish it. Regarding those rules, Jesus says, the Son of Man is Lord of the Sabbath. All right, so, I guess that rules are good. And I guess in 2020, we've all become very practiced at obeying rules. It's quite normal for us now to be told where to stand in Starbucks. It's quite normal for us to be told you can't enter this shop unless you're wearing a surgical mask, and so on and so forth. We get that. We get rules, and we get why sometimes they're good and necessary. Originally, the Sabbath commandment was given by God to help people, to make their lives easier, not harder, better, not worse. It was meant to introduce rest into periods of busyness and stress. But over the years, the concept of rest and recovery had been perverted into lifeless rules. And so by the time Jesus is on the scene, the day of rest became a day of burden. And so in verse 5, Jesus is saying, you people are wrong about this issue, all right? God gave you the day of rest as something good. You've managed to turn it into something bad. God gave you the day of rest to help you. You have managed to turn it into something harmful and miserable. That rule that you have about walking 199 paces on a Sabbath, how is that helping anyone? It's a day of rest and you got to do math? Doesn't make any sense. It's supposed to be a good thing. How do you turn a good thing into a bad thing? You're wrong. Here's what I've changed my mind about as far as the Sabbath is concerned. I come from a place, as you know, where the Sabbath was always bad. When I was a child, Sundays to me were the worst day of the week. My earliest memories of the Christian Sabbath were just a collection of things I wasn't allowed to do. Wasn't allowed to watch TV, didn't really matter. They never put anything good on a Sunday anyway. I wasn't allowed to go out and play with my friends. I wasn't allowed to make a lot of noise in the house because it was the Lord's Day. The only thing I was allowed to do on a Sunday was watch a rather horrible TV program called Songs of Praise. It's exactly what an 8-year-old wants to do. And I was allowed to read an encyclopedia, the same encyclopedia, and I just read this throughout my whole childhood, which may explain why I have the brain the size of a small planet. So, yeah, thanks for that, Mum. So because that was my experience of Sundays growing up, I welcomed, as a young person and as a young theological student and eventually as a young minister, I welcomed with open arms the opening up of society. So when shops started opening on a Sunday, I thought that was a great thing. When they started having sporting events on a Sunday, I thought that was amazing. It was unheard of when I was a kid to have a soccer game on a Sunday. But when you started having Rangers and Celtic games on after church, I thought that was amazing. People, that would be good. People like to do that kind of thing. I was all in. But now, as a slightly older person, nowhere near as old as you, of course, but slightly older, I think, I've changed my mind. I think that the way things used to be were better. I don't think we need supermarkets to be open 7 days a week, 24 hours a day. I don't really think we need to have soccer and football and hockey happening on a Sunday. I think that what people really need more than anything else today is a rest. They need a break. They don't need more stuff to do. They need less stuff to do. Think about it. Think about the paradoxes of our time. We've never had more channels on our TV, but there's nothing on. We've never had more options for entertainment, but we've never been more bored. We earn more money than our parents and grandparents could ever have dreamed of earning, but we feel less and less secure. We have every time-saving device and app and program known to man, but we're always running out of time and forgetting to do things. I think in many respects, it's not working. We live in a time where people have more than they've ever had. We are richer, healthier, and living longer than any generation before us. And that's a fact, by the way. These things you see on the news about how miserable everything is, it's wrong. By all manner of markers, life on this planet has never, ever, ever been better. Less people are dying of starvation than ever before. There's less people are dying in conflicts than ever before. There's less racism than ever before, more diversity than ever before. Less children are dying before their 4th birthday than ever before. More people are seeing their 75th birthday than ever before. We've never been healthier, richer, and longer living than we are today. And yet in our culture, in spite of all the things we have, unhappiness is an epidemic. That's the modern paradox, isn't it? We've done it as a species. We've done it. We've successfully created the world that hundreds and hundreds of generations before us have tried to create. If you could take our forebearers from hundreds of years ago to today, they would look at our life and go, it worked. All the struggles, all the fights, all the wars we ever fought, it was for this and it worked. You're rich, you're prosperous, you're healthy. It worked. And yet, it feels like it doesn't. We're all filled with stress and angst and unhappiness. Popping pills and doing all those other things. I think that one of the things we really need is just a break. I think we need a day every 7 days to just reflect and stop and de-stress. And yes, maybe even celebrate all the many good things that are ours in life. We need to jump out of our little gerbil wheels and look at the cage around us and see it ain't so bad. On another Sabbath, he went into the synagogue and was teaching. And a man was there whose right hand was shriveled. So this is another Sabbath story. It's the day when God's people are supposed to be resting and reflecting and celebrating the many things that are good in their life. However, when you're really good at knowing what the rules are and keeping the rules, and when you've already got all the answers, and when your life is already perfect, all that remains for you to do is watch and be critical of those whose lives are less perfect. And so notice here, it's fascinating to me, the Pharisees are there too, again. They're part of Jesus' extended circle. But they're not there to celebrate. They're not there to rest. and they're not there to search for joy. They're there to watch. You got people like that in your circle? The watchers. All the time, just looking. The Pharisees and the teachers of the law were looking for a reason to accuse Jesus. Isn't that nice? Like, if I didn't like someone, I just wouldn't hang around them. If I thought someone was an idiot, I just wouldn't answer their calls. But there's some people that can't be that way. They watched him closely to see if he would heal on the Sabbath, but Jesus knew what they were thinking and said to the man with the shriveled hand, "Get up and stand in front of everyone." So he got up and he stood there. Then in the next sentence, Jesus turns to the Pharisees and says this, "I ask you, which is lawful on the Sabbath? To do good or to do evil? To save a life or to destroy it?" Now, Jesus could have healed this man anytime, anywhere, any place. He didn't have to make this issue happen on the Sabbath. And the fact that he does so suggests to me he's deliberately causing trouble here. He's saying to his critics, the only reason you're here is to catch me healing someone on the Sabbath day, to catch me doing something that you think is work and is against your stupid rules on the Sabbath day. That's the only reason you're here. Well, guess what? I'm going to do what you think I'm going to do. But before I do what you think I'm going to do, let me ask you a question. According to your own silly rules, which is lawful? To do good or to do evil? To save a life or to harm a life? It's a very simple question. And what's interesting about it is it's a question that the Pharisees could have easily answered in a way that would have made Jesus look incredibly stupid. The writings of the Pharisees all concur that it's always right to save a life on the Sabbath. They even had that rule, remember, about how if a building falls down, it's okay to go into construction mode and rescue someone if they're alive. They had all sorts of rules about that. The writings of the rabbis also concur on the illegality of the antithesis. It's always wrong to do harm on the Sabbath. It's always wrong to kill on the Sabbath or any other day for that matter. So this question is one that the Pharisees should have been easily able to answer in such a way that made Jesus look incredibly stupid. Because you see, this man in the synagogue with the shriveled hand is not in danger. He had a shriveled hand yesterday. He had one the day before. He's probably had the same problem for years. You know, no one needs to call a doctor here. You don't have to call Thunderbirds to the rescue. He's just got a shriveled hand. I mean, it's a shame and everything, but his life isn't in danger. So the Pharisees could easily have said to Jesus, well, Jesus, actually, it is lawful to save a life on the Sabbath, but this man's life does not need saving, because he's not in any immediate danger. And they would have been right to make that argument, but they didn't. Why? They realized that Jesus was talking about something much more radical than the healing of a shriveled hand. You see, when first century Jews spoke about the break and the rest and the new joy of a Sabbath day, they were talking about something far deeper than that thing that happened every 7 days. They were talking about a belief they had that went something like this. We understand, as we look around our world, that it's just messed up today. Everything's broken, nothing works, crazy is the new normal. It's harder than it ever was. Can't get ahead, can't catch a break, like nothing works in my life. It's just a mess. And when they spoke about Sabbath, they were speaking about a time that they looked forward to when God fixed all of that in such a way that would cause them to go, finally, our problems are over. Do you understand what I'm saying? To talk about the Sabbath in the first century is to talk about a guy who's been out of work for 6 months and can't pay his bills, and then he finally catches a break. It's to talk about a single mother struggling to bring up her 4 kids, and she's always falling behind, and there's never enough food in the fridge, and then she finally catches a break. It's to talk about a relationship that's been damaged and dysfunctional for years, and then suddenly the phone calls start happening again, and there's restoration, and there's togetherness, and you finally catch a break. To talk about Sabbath in the first century is to talk about fast forwarding to the day after life starts working again. That's what Jesus is talking about. For Jesus' critics, the Sabbath was all about how many paces did you walk today? How many knots did you tie today? What did and didn't you do? Jesus is like, you people don't get it. I came to help people. I came to fix things. And so he looked around at them all and said to the man, stretch out your hand. And he did so. And his hand was completely restored. I don't think Jesus was upset by his critics in this verse. I think he's upset for them. They just don't get it. They won't get it. And so it ends. The Pharisees and the teachers of the law were furious. How does helping someone make you angry? How does trying to do what's right make you angry? And yet they were in synagogue every Sunday, messed up. And they began to discuss with one another what they might do to Jesus. It's a tale of 2 people, isn't it? On one Sunday in church, one guy's life was fixed for the better, and another guy just got mad and went into a corkscrew of bitterness and rage. Same word, different results. Thank you for coming. Thank you for joining in at home. God bless you. We'll see you next Sunday.